I talked last time about some of the contributions to behavior in cells. We have ohmic resistance, we have electrode overpotentials, we potentially also have mass transfer effects. What I have here is the result of some curve fitting. What I've done is I've taken the data and I fit it to a bunch of terms. There's a measured temperature dependence for the ohmic resistance, for the kinetic coefficients for the anode and cathode. The other thing that's included in here is some dependency on the gas concentrations. How does the rate of the anode depend on the hydrogen concentration and the water concentration? How do the cathode kinetics scale with the oxygen partial pressure? That's really important because that's what we want to look at in the stack model. We want to look at how the concentrations are varying and how the temperature is varying and see how that impacts the local current density and then integrate over that. These are just sort of example calculations, plotting as a function of temperature and as a function of hydrogen concentration, what these polarization curves look like. And that's including changes in equilibrium potential that causes the open circuit voltage to go up and down. And then the other thing that can happen is temperature. So lower temperatures, the overpotential, the ohmic resistance tend to be much greater at smaller current densities. And so the voltage drops off much more quickly. Whereas as we get up to higher temperatures, the kinetics are faster. And what that means is we get less voltage drop for a given current density. These are all embedded in the parameters over here. There is electrolyte resistance and activation energy for the electrolyte, anode exchange current density, a cathode exchange current density, the anodic and cathodic transfer coefficients. These are things we can just adjust anytime we want to. If we want to consider like a faster cell or something that has worse kinetics, these are all things we could include in our cell model and then see how that translates over to what the stack is going to do. So there's one more part, and that has to do with how do you incorporate the cell model. So basically the cell model allows you to link the voltage to the current density. In theory, that's just a defined relationship by the model. So I give it the cell voltage, it should be able to calculate the current density for us. The problem is I don't have one equation that says I equals function of voltage. Instead, what we have is voltage equals equilibrium voltage minus ohmic resistance minus kinetic resistance and so forth. So it's voltage as a function of current. And so it looks just like this. It's these curves. I want it to be at 0.7 volts, which is right here. Come across and I read the chart. I can read it on a graph, but I don't have a single equation that gives me what that current density is at that voltage. So how do we solve that? And the way I've done that here in this spreadsheet is using the Newton-Raphson method. Those of you who are not familiar with this method and maybe haven't learned it or don't remember it, I just wanted to go over briefly how it works. The basic idea is we have this model, voltage versus current. There's no way I can take this and algebraically rearrange it to express it as I as a function of V. So it basically starts out with an initial guess of the current density. And the no-brainer guess is just to guess zero. And of course, at zero current, these terms are all zero. And so we just get the equilibrium potential. And then to calculate a slope, you just go a little bit higher in current. So it takes the current and it calculates a little bit higher current density, some very tiny number that is much smaller than the current density would ever be. And then we recalculate the voltage at that point. So I get 2 points right next to each other. Doop, doop. So I get the equilibrium voltage at one point, and then I get slightly less than the equilibrium voltage at the other point. And then based on those 2 points, we calculate a slope. That slope is in units of volts per amp or resistance. It's a resistance. It gives us this straight line approximation for the polarization curve. That linear behavior, that is invertible. We're taking the operating voltage, which we know, and then we're looking at this current where we're going to make our next guess. So we take this current, we go to the polarization curve. So we calculate the voltage here. We go a little bit further away from that and calculate another one right there. Calculate a new straight line given by a new resistance, R1, and then do the same thing again. Project again, get a little bit closer, and so forth. And we just keep doing this repeatedly over and over and over again until every time we put that current back in, we just get the operating voltage. It converges. And it's pretty easy to implement on a spreadsheet. And so the Newton-Raphson part that I was just describing to you is over here. where we initially guess a current density of 0. We make an initial, based on that, we calculate the voltage at that current density. We calculate very close to that voltage, a new voltage, take the difference, divide by the difference in current, and that gives us a resistance. So if we open up this cell, it's got a huge formula in it because it's got all of our overpotentials and ohmic loss and all of that. It's in there twice because we're taking it between two different points very close to each other, taking the difference and then calculating the slope. So then based on that slope, I project forward to get a new guess of the current density based on the linear profile. And that gives me a new guess. And then we recalculate the voltage and get a new resistance and calculate a new guess and blah, 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 blah. So it does it 6 times. And here's the final answer. Here at this current density, which is the final guess, it's calculating cell voltages across the whole stack of 0.7 volts. So we've successfully converged on a solution that's giving us the current density as a function of position.